Welcome to the Exit Rich podcast, where the leading authority on buying, selling, fixing, and growing companies, Michelle Seiler Tucker, is dedicated to helping you find the path to retire rich and move on to your next adventure by exiting your business for the desired dream price you deserve. Get ready to exit rich with your host, Michelle Seiler Tucker.
Welcome to another episode of Exit Rich. I'm very excited about today's guest, and the reason for that is because, listen up, startups. these wonderful people, Ben and Laura, who are husband and wife, they started their own business from a personal tragedy. They took their tragedy and created a really awesome business, and we're going to get into the details and how they did that. Remember, if you ask questions, share comments, I will give you the first 3 chapters of my book, Exit Rich, if we read it aloud. So make sure you make those comments, okay? So, welcome to the show, Ben and Laura Harrison. Husband and wife duo, Ben and Lauren Harrison, launched Jonas Paul Eyewear. Jonas Paul Eyewear. Did I say that correctly?
Correct.
Yes.
Yep.
Jonas Paul Eyewear. What a wonderful name. I love this name. Inspired by the birth of their son, Jonas Paul, so they named the company after him, and who was born with a rare eye condition that left him blind. So I'm going to ask the two of you, number one, welcome to the show. I'm going to ask the two of you to go ahead and share your son's story, because it's so much better when you tell it rather than me reading about it. So let's get started. Tell us a little bit about Jonas.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having us. We're really excited to chat with you and share our story with your audience, and hopefully people feel inspired and encouraged by our conversation today.
Yes, you're so welcome. You know, when I heard your story, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to have them on. And I like having a husband and wife business because you're also going to share what it's like to work together.
Yeah, definitely.
Which a lot of entrepreneurs want to know. So let's go ahead and get started with Jonas.
Yes, so just to give a little bit of context, I'll start with kind of, I guess, the leading up to the birth of Jonas. So Laura and I met in undergrad, and then we ended up actually starting several businesses after college. And so we had a photography business as well as a business in the website development space. So websites for photographers, creatives, et cetera. So we're already entrepreneurial. And then, because of owning our own businesses, we ended up waiting 7 years to start a family. And so decided finally, once because we had our other babies that were our businesses, and then, decided to start a family. We're fortunate enough to get pregnant, and then I will pass it off to Laura for that piece of the story.
Did you say you were fortunate enough to get pregnant, or Laura was?
We were, but I did a lot of the work.
Yeah.
So Jonas was born in March 2013. So he's 10 years old now, which is just crazy to think about all that's happened the last 10 years. But a little backstory on him. So the pregnancy and all of that was totally fine, very normal from a pregnancy standpoint. But when I went in to give birth, it was a pretty kind of crazy situation. Ended up having to have an emergency C-section, and in the operating room, when you're laying on the table, I remember hearing him cry, which as a parent, that's always kind of that first cry. You're like, okay, everything's okay.
And then you put the TV on, and they can get used to noise.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they brought Jonas over to me, and I was laying on the table, and I don't remember a whole lot in this moment, but the one thing I do remember was Ben bringing him over and me saying, "Does he have pupils?" And in that moment, Ben was like, he just had a traumatic experience coming into the world. Let us they're going to clean him up and all of that. And but that was kind of the first moment where part of my thinking was is something wrong, but kind of dismissed it in that moment.
Well, right away, you saw.
I noticed something was just different. And, but you think, hey, like maybe he's just goopy and dirty from, the birth process. And so, so it was about the next day that a doctor came in to check him out. And that was kind of when everything, I would say, kind of shifted for our lives. And they kind of noticed that his eyes were a little bit different. And so they sent him off to see a pediatric ophthalmologist who kind of did a several hour exam on him, which as a 24-hour, 30-hour baby, like new baby, that's a pretty long time to be away. And in that moment, we kept feeling like, gosh, is something going on that we don't know about? And the doctor ended up coming back to the hospital room and kind of sucked the oxygen out of the air, I would say, and kind of said to us, like, I don't know what is wrong. I've never seen this or experienced this, but I don't really know what to tell you is wrong with your son. And I just remember in that moment, like, screaming and bawling and crying, like, is he blind? Is he blind? And thinking to ourselves, like, what just happened? Like, we went from thinking our baby's perfect, pretty seems fine and everything, to potentially kind of a very different situation. And so I would say that moment was kind of where everything changed in our lives. And it was kind of sent us down this whole path of just eye care and what that's going to involve and what his future is going to be. And so we're based in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and the hospital here said you have the opportunity to either go to Northwestern in Chicago to kind of see a specialist there, or University of Michigan. And we kind of chose the path to go to University of Michigan, and that kind of started us down this odyssey, I would say, of eye surgeries and just pursuing what we could to give him the most potential for sight.
And he's
and I think
22 surgeries, right? I'm sorry.
He's had 22. Mm-hmm.
No, and that's fine. And I was going to say then kind of what, I guess from there, taking it to what was really the impetus for the business was we met with a doctor at University of Michigan, and she confirmed that the condition he was born with was Peter's anomaly and that it was really rare, a pretty unique thing to have. And, everyone's cases vary, but that Jonas did have potential for sight. And I think, to Laura's point, when we found out that Jonas's life was going to be different than ours, I think as parents, you start, I don't know, selfishly, it's kind of that loss of expectation, and you maybe don't respond appropriately because you just think of how different things will be. Mm-hmm. And I think with us being in the visual arts and creatives, it also, our career was built on the visual arts. So it was just really hard for us to process how different his life could be. So I think in that we were really struggling, but that was more of our own internal personal struggle.
I think a lot of parents would struggle though, Ben.
Yeah.
I mean, if that was my child, I would struggle too. Mm-hmm. I think it wouldn't be normal if you didn't struggle.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah. And I think, then after that, through that struggle, we met with the doctor, and she did give us a little bit of hope and said that, sometimes kids who do have Peter's anomaly have potential for sight if you choose the surgery route, which would be, cornea transplants and other kind of a hard road that Laura had mentioned. And so we did opt for that path. And I think in that process, that was what inspired me as, the stylish dad that I think I am, wanting to find him really stylish glasses so that he looked like a little stud muffin. And just felt like the options were lacking for kids, especially what like adults would wear, but for kids there was.
Well, you want them to fit in, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You want Jonas to fit in, and Jonas wants to fit in, and not everybody else.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and I think I had those flashbacks of me wearing glasses as a child in elementary school and being embarrassed because they were the very functional looking ones and not really stylish or something I was excited about. So I think in that moment we really kind of decided to push out our challenges and use this as a creative outlet to hopefully make an impact in the world. I think we were thrust into this space that we really knew nothing about, but we saw a lot of opportunity to help kids feel confident in their glasses and a lot of opportunity for childhood blindness prevention as well, which are kind of two key aspects to our business.
Is that because you saw a gap in the market, that there really wasn't fun,
Yeah.
cool looking
Yes.
eyewear for.
Yep.
Yeah, I think
partners.
kids was always an underserved portion of the market, and that's validated by some of our investors who do have deep optical industry experience. It was always kind of more treated as like, you just need something functional to hold lenses on their face versus thinking like, well, the child might have ideas of how they want to express themselves, or like they might be fashion conscious and care about how they dress. So I think there was, and a lot of like the stereotypical things too, kind of with regards to like, oh, kids love bright pinks and bright blues, and like not as much of really where adults, where it is kind of more of a refined aesthetic, so that was kind of a
you
big.
should see some of my
big piece.
eyeglasses. I got lots of colors.
Yeah.
Right, so,
No, for sure.
so you took a tragedy, because it was a tragedy, right? Would you agree?
Mhm.
And you struggled, and a lot of people, a lot of parents would say, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to Jonas? Why is all this happening to us? Versus, why is this happening for us? And how can we impact the world and give Jonas the best possible life he can have and truly belong, with everybody else, right? So you looked at it, how did this happen for us? And you're already an entrepreneur, so it's not like you didn't have any entrepreneurial skill set, both of you. However, you had zero experience in the eyeglass space. Zero. Now, you know about graphics, you know about design, you know about all that, Ben, but zero experience in eyeglasses, because there's so many different frames that have to fit so many different prescription lenses, right? I've gone through that myself. So that's pretty gutsy.
Yeah.
And you two seem to get comfortable with being uncomfortable and going in a space that you didn't know a whole lot about. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, that question, the way you phrased that comment around why did this happen to us, I feel like even
for us.
Did the for us, yes.
Instead of to
us. It really challenged us even in our pre-interview, because I think that captures, I don't know, kind of that spirit of how we looked at it. Because I do think, to your point, it can be really easy when you face challenges. Just the natural human reaction is to like, woe is me. Why did this happen to me? It's unfair. And I think if you aren't able to really kind of get outside your shell and like push that out and think of, I don't know, external things, and really how fortunate you really are, I think it can be really paralyzing, when you face a challenging situation. And I think for us, without really being able to articulate it that way, why did this happen for us? I think that was really, what we thought was, hey, it's a challenging situation. We see a lot of, withdrawing from society when it comes to disability and things, because it can just be challenging. We remember those challenges and seeing, the families in the hospital with, challenging situations. But I think for us, it really inspired us to like push out. I think when you're suffering, sometimes the best way to get out of your own head and out of your own suffering is to realize how fortunate you are by serving others and making an impact. And I think that was what really motivated us, was seeing that opportunity in a space that we had no idea about, but were thrust into, really forced into. I think we saw opportunity to make impact, both for kids, domestically, who are embarrassed to wear their glasses. Like, could we create a brand that's empowering, exciting for them, and confidence boosting? But then also on the flip side, we had, the resources to give Jonas the potential for sight. And I think early on, I don't know what it was that caused us to kind of come to that realization, but was like, how fortunate are we to really be in a place where we can give him potential for sight? And we thought, I couldn't imagine being a parent in the developing world and having a child go blind and being able to do nothing about it. So that was another piece that felt like, wow, we could take this, pain and this challenge, and we really could make the world a better place and really change the trajectory of kids kind of all over the world, especially in the blindness prevention side.
And I think too, just to piggyback on that, I think when Ben first kind of brought this idea up to me, it was about a month, I want to say, after Jonas was born. So very early on. And I remember thinking, like, he had other ideas along the way that I've just been like, no, that's not really a great one to pursue.
Bless your heart. That's cute.
Like,
Yeah.
that's, we'll save that for another time. And I felt like this one, there was something about it where when you talked to me about it, it was like, I felt like such peace about pursuing it too. And I can remember back to sitting at the table at our house at the time and like remembering like that conversation like so clearly and being like, yes, like, let's try this. And we're either going to figure out if it's something that anyone else wants, feels like there's a need for, or we're going to not pursue it. And so I feel like we'll know pretty soon on in the process. And so thankfully you were not scared to bring that idea up to me that day.
I know. Yeah. Entrepreneurs were gluttons for punishment. Why do we do this to ourselves? But yeah, I think to that point too, of like, we weren't afraid to pursue it. I just don't think there are many like more powerful forces in the world than like parents fighting for their children and, trying to advocate for their children and
we're the
support them.
only
And I think that
advocates
was,
in most cases,
yeah.
and when you're not their advocate, then that's a whole different situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So you said a couple of things I'd like to unpack. Ben, you said we had to get out of our head. We were suffering. We had to get out of our head. So many people stay in that suffering mode. And as Tony Robbins always says, if you're in your head, you're dead.
Yeah.
So you have to get out of that head. And then what Laura said is, a lot of ideas to me, but this one resonated with me the most. Well, entrepreneurs, you can't just come up with one idea and think that one's going to work. You have to brainstorm and you have to bounce it off of others and you have to talk it through. So those were great. So let's talk about, so you both have no experience in eyeglass wear. So what did you do to find the right team, the right professionals to understand how to build frames to fit all these different, how many different prescriptions are there?
Yeah.
And so
exactly.
how did you find that team?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, initially it started really small. To be honest, the world is shrinking, candidly. We started on Alibaba with, verified manufacturers, and there's all these different tools you can use to kind of, figure out freight records and who sources what and all of that. So really a lot of it was kind of just that grunt work of figuring out, okay, what are regulations around kids eyewear? What are costs? What are, minimum investments and all of that? And so I think initially we just, self-funded it. A lot of, like kind of late nights trying to figure out, who could be the right manufacturer for us to at least test the model and kind of get like a minimum viable product out there. And so really self-funded it in the beginning, started with 5 styles. We shipped them directly to families and like let them take them into their doctor to get the prescriptions filled and all of that. So started really with like a very MVP product, I think, just to test the market and see if there was actually something that would, resonate.
How much research? How long did it take you to do the research versus to get into an MVP?
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot, I would say.
Yeah.
Because really, again, it is a medical device.
What was the time frame? Was it a year?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
It was probably 5 months, I want to say, from when we first started talking, because we launched the company 6 months after he was born. And so, and we had to do sourcing, design.
Wow, listen to that, audience. So you need to get off your butts.
The things
and get started, because there's never a perfect time.
Yeah.
They just found out their son was blind. They've been through 22 surgeries and they started the business within 6 months. So all of you out there with your big butts, but I got to wait for this, but I got to wait for funding, but I got to do this, but it has to be perfect. Get off your big butts and get started. So that's amazing. 6 months later, self-funded. I believe you said you put in $50,000.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, over the course of the first 2 years or so, we put in probably around 50,000. Initial opening order was, maybe in the 15 to 20,000 range, kind of for everything, to get the product here. And And then over those first couple of years, there was a bit of a burn there because as we were trying to grow the business. So
oh yeah, there's a burn, baby. There's a burn.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny too, just on that note, like when we turned the website on, I remember like thinking, okay, everybody's going to know about this. And fun fact, like we didn't even actually have product in like our house. We were working out of our house at the time and we had nothing. And so we hadn't received anything yet. And so
this was a little naive in the space of medical devices because it had landed in the States, but we didn't realize the process of getting
it through customs
and FDA clearance and all of that.
You also had to find manufacturers, right? You had to go out and find a manufacturing company.
Yeah.
That takes time.
So it was just hindsight. Like, I mean, maybe that was, it all worked out, but I like to laugh, I guess, at that, the thought of us launching the company without actually having product to sell. And
but wait a minute, Laura. That's actually a blessing in disguise that you don't even know.
Yeah.
So that was another blessing for you because so many people do go to market without any product or without any classes, especially e-learning and things like that. They go to market first. They want to test the market. Kevin Harrington is a perfect example who endorsed my book, Exit Rich. Kevin Harrington says, I don't do anything until I go to social media and I split test and I market, and I pre-sell product. Then I go get the product.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to have all your ducks in a row to be able to do it in a timely fashion. But what you did was actually a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and at the time, and at the time, this was 10 years ago. So I feel like so much has changed too with, platforms where, what are the social platforms that people can go on and support you? What are those called?
Oh, like Kickstarter.
Yeah, Kickstarter. Like that didn't really exist at the time either. So the concept of like us, we were so naive in that moment, but it all worked out. And I remember just being like, we have so many orders coming in but
you are
it's
not
just taking
naive.
us a long time.
You are not naive. I need my audience to pick up on the right points here. You are not naive. You are not. So many people wait till they get all the product in. They wait till they get all the ducks in a row. They get the product. They have no orders. They didn't do anything.
Sure.
You are not naive. You think you are naive, but you're actually doing the right thing in business. And that's what I tell all my entrepreneurs. Don't wait till it's perfect. Don't wait till you have everything. Yes, get your ducks in a row, but the worst thing you can do is be stuck with a bunch of product. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
So you weren't naive. You were naive in your head, but you were doing the right thing all the way. Jonas was blessing you and so was God.
Yeah.
All right. So then you had to go and raise capital. At what time frame did you have to raise capital?
Yes, that, and I was also going to go back to your original question because I do think that's important about how do you learn about these things, and I think it goes back to kind of that like find a network or find people. I think there's so many individuals that are experts in the field that are happy to give 30 minutes of their time, an hour of their time to just like help an entrepreneur that's really excited or passionate about something. So I think that don't be afraid to really try to find your people, so to speak, in your network, and lean on that to try to just get as many insights as you can. And I think we were fortunate enough to go through a program called Praxis, which kind of became our people, but it was a social enterprise accelerator based out of New York City. And I think that was really influential in our early days of the business, like just having that encouragement of other people that were trying things, losing money, like stressing about it because you have your day job that's paying the bills, but you have this passion project that is bleeding capital, but you like really feel passionate and want to pursue it. So I think that's really important, is like finding a network of people that really can support you and you can bounce ideas off of and learn quickly. And then through that, actually that accelerator, we ended up doing pitch nights. And in Austin, we met a guy named David McKinnon, who was former founder of like Molly Maid and ProTech Painters and some other really big franchises. And yeah, he made a comment. He sat down at our table after the pitch and just felt really compelled by our story and just said, hey, you should meet Cliff Bartow. He was former CEO of LensCrafters. And we were like, Yes, we should meet Cliff Bartow. That would be great if you made that introduction. And so that was in 2015. So we had been running it. We launched it at the end of 2013, had been running it for about a year and a half, and then ended up meeting with Cliff, who was early retired, really impact driven, really loved our story, kind of going back to what we said originally, saw how much the kids space was neglected in optical and saw the opportunity. And so he ended up kind of leading, along with David McKinnon and Alan Gardart, a group that down in Atlanta, they ended up doing a small round. And then Cliff also brought in Joel Sedano, who was former SVP of product at Luxottica. So we ended up very fortunate. I think since we pursued a network and like put ourselves out there and really were trying to discern whether or not this was the right thing to pursue, I think there was provision, call it God or call it whatever you believe in. But yeah, it was really, we believe that kind of God aligned this and kind of created this opportunity for us to meet the right people that would help really take it to the next level. And kind of, we, immediately gained, 50 years of optical experience and expertise, kind of overnight once we, pursued the right partners, the right investors.
Yeah. So that's very important what you said, because you do have to align yourself with a network. That's why there's so many mastermind groups around the world. Mm-hmm. But you need to find the right network. You need to find, industry leaders that in the industry that you want to be in, and find the right mentors. Very, very, very valuable, because you wouldn't have gotten where you are today if you didn't do that. So that's huge. And we tell our audience to do that all the time. But do your due diligence. Make sure you're hiring the right mentor. And you're right, entrepreneurs, very successful entrepreneurs, want to help other entrepreneurs. If they're not very successful, they don't want to help you because they can't help themselves. Or they try to help you and charge you a lot of money for it. So that's important. So you 1.5 years into it is when you decided to raise capital, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit quick, because we're only on question 3 and I have a whole bunch.
Yes.
Get moving.
Yeah, let's get moving. So tell us a little bit about how that process was. How did you find the capital? You didn't find the capital to start the company, you used your own money to do so. So many people start their business on what I call the shoestring approach, but then they never really grow very far because you only have so much money, right? And you're not profitable from day one. How long did it take y'all to become profitable?
I'm trying to think. It's a great question. I mean, really in the end, it really kind of took 7 or 8 years really to get to a point of, really having a truly profitable company. We made choices along the way that made us not profitable, like investing in digital marketing and things like that. It could have been profitable at an earlier stage, but really in the end, we wanted to grow something bigger. We wanted to invest in the brand and keep it growing. And so,
so are you saying you didn't turn a profit for 7, 8 years?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So how long did you?
Of any significance, yeah.
How long? Now you said you kept your day jobs. Did you have a day job because you had other companies?
We did. We had
the photography business and the web company that we had. We kind of stopped those when we raised that our first round back in 2015.
A year and a half.
That kind of So the first year and a half, we were running 3 companies at one time, essentially, and had a new baby. And so it was a lot.
And that's your second child. And then after you get the funds, then you stop the other businesses, and you're looking 1,000% in this
Jonas
company.
Paul. Yep.
Okay. Yes. All right. So that makes sense. So how many people did you go out to raise capital? How many people did you pitch to?
Ben went on the speaking circuit, I would say, or the capital raise circuit, where he was. I mean, it was a couple of years, like especially on our second round too, that we did our second round in 2019. That was, he definitely was out there hitting the pavement, trying to get as many people, in front of as many people as he possibly could for, several months. And, but thankfully, we were able to really get aligned with some additional awesome investors, even in our second round too.
Yeah. And I think along the way, a little more context on that. So the initial round, I don't want to say it kind of fell into our lap, but it kind of did with like the right people, like a few key individuals that really believed in what we were doing. And I think, at that stage, it was kind of like still such a small business. We had put some capital into it, but we hadn't really invested a ton into growth. So it wasn't a really exciting story. It's like, you always kind of hear that. I forget who coined the phrase, but sell the sizzle, not the steak. And I think we had like enough steak that it was kind of like, okay, I don't know, it could be something, but it isn't like, we did have some traction and showed some numbers. So it was a little really more at that stage, like they really believed in what it could be. And so anyways, raised a small round there and then continued to invest in the brand. And then we were kind of really more organically growing. And then we were approached in 2017 at an optical conference. We were doing a booth there. And Walmart approached us and she asked if we'd be willing to sell in Walmart. And so, that was one of those like amazing moments where you never know, she had her badge backwards, was being a little, I don't know, coy and shy. I mean, intentional about it because she knows the power that she wields. But anyways, I said to her, we decided one of the key tenets of our brand was to make great design accessible to anyone, to have a more accessible price point and meet everyone where they are. And, love the answer. And we ended up launching in Walmart Vision Centers in 2018. And that was a huge win along the way too, because then that kind of sent us on these two tracks where we had direct to consumer, but then also a pretty significant wholesale business that then was providing cash flow to reinvest in the business. And so it was some of those key wholesale opportunities that ended up getting us to that point of profitability and being able to reinvest in that. And then, as Laura mentioned, we ended up just kept having opportunities, kept having all these things happen, which was great along the way, both with wholesale and direct to consumer. And then did decide to raise more capital in 2019 to continue to pour more fuel on the fire.
Let's take a pause there because you already went past my fourth question. Well, I was going to talk about wholesale retail. So let's go back to investment real quick.
Yes.
How many investors did we get and how many rounds?
Yeah, so 2 rounds. So we did a Series Seed in 2015 with 3 investors. And then we ended up doing another one in 2019. And we're at a total of 13 investors. And so various ones.
Investors, and you had to give up equity for that, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Would you do that all over again? Would you give up equity for money if you had to do it all over again?
Yes, I would. Yeah, because we definitely wouldn't be where we are today without them. And also, I think the key also is we have great investors, as Laura mentioned. Like, we have very patient capital, very understanding investors. So I think it could have been a different story, I think, had we pursued a more aggressive investor with like, I have a 5-year timeline, you have to hit these numbers, or things are not going to go well between us. And so I think it's one of those, because we aligned with the right investors, I definitely wouldn't change the way that we did it.
So patient investors, y'all listen up. When you go to raise capital, because I'm telling you, almost everybody that listens to this podcast, Exit Rich, is always looking for capital. So listen up. You need those patient investors. Now, did you also get investors that had skill sets? Was this in their wheelhouse? Did they know all about eyewear and design? What type of investors did you go after?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. I think that's another piece too of finding the right investors. Having a good lead investor that really believes in what you're doing, that has industry experience. Cliff, for example, he ended up bringing in several other former Luxottica executives. So now we have quite the
lineup.
Quite the lineup, really, when people look at us, in the industry, and they're like, how did you get all of these investors, to join the company? Because there's such well-respected individuals in the industry. And so I think that's another piece too, of if you find the right investor that's really passionate and believes in what you're doing, they're going to help bring their network in as well. Mm-hmm. And it makes it a lot easier to raise capital when you have someone like that, really, that believes in it. He has money he has skin in the game, wants to bring kind of his friends along and other people in the industry that he respects. I think that
I think that's huge. I think that's very important, because so many people go after the money.
Yeah.
And you know what? You can go after the money all day long. Money doesn't always make you successful.
Yeah, so true.
Yeah.
Networking and getting the right people, the right team in as investors with industry experience and a huge network is what will help catapult you to the next level. How many no's did you have to take before you started getting some yeses?
Quite a few. Fortunately, I got a lot of quick no's. I think that's that can be the challenging part, or like the part that's constantly tugging at you if you just don't get like quick no's, like, hey, this isn't a right fit for us, but I'm happy to introduce you to so-and-so. I think it could have been a harder road had I gotten
10,
a lot more
15, 20, how many?
I would say probably around 10 to 15 no's.
Yeah.
Like investors that I thought like were pretty serious, like thought it might be a fit. You know, there are many others I talked to where I was just kind of like putting feelers out there that were more gentle no's. But I would say like investors that I was more actively pursuing, probably 10 to 15 or so.
You know, that's not bad. That's not bad. There's people that went after hundreds and hundreds of people, like Walt Disney. I think he had, over 1,000 people who told him no. And so you can't quit too soon. You know, it's 3 feet from gold. Everybody's always 3 feet from gold.
Yeah.
And so, okay. And so that's been a good process for you guys. Did you have any assistance, any help with raising this capital? Did you go to a firm that specializes in capital raise, or did you do everything yourself?
Did everything, pretty much ourselves. Fortunately, there's a lot of resources, like startup accelerator resources and all of that. And then I think Praxis, this community we were a part of, had a lot of resources and a lot of people that were kind of advisors and volunteered their time to that. And so we ended up, I think, fortunately through the network that we established, we were able to get a lot of advice. And then one of our investors in particular is pretty savvy, has invested in other things and had some kind of boilerplate, agreements, operating agreement and things like that we were able to kind of make it a little more of a smooth process.
So this is a success story if y'all listening out there. They got into the industry they didn't really know anything about. They never raised capital before, and they were able to raise capital. All right, let's see if there's any questions over here about capital. Kaylee asked, were there any challenges in raising capital for business with a social mission? How do you communicate the impact and expect? Okay, we're going to pass on that right now, only because I want to now dive into wholesale retail before we get into the impact of your story, raising capital and everything else that's tied to that. So let's go in now and start talking about wholesale versus resale, right? What did you start first?
We started, our direct to consumer in 2013. So that was kind of our bread and butter right out of the gate. Like
that's when you had sales. That's when you had sales, Laura, but you didn't have the product, or you had the product, but you didn't know you had the product.
Yes. And we did not pursue wholesale until that day that the buyer approached us from Walmart in 2017 and then launched in 2018. So we went.
So I'm going to pause you every now and then because you guys say some brilliant things and I got to communicate that to the listeners. All right, so we can't just keep going. I got to pause you.
Yes.
So that's important. Okay. So 2015 to 2017, they did resell direct to consumers. And that was 100% of your business. How many orders did you actually have before you knew you had product?
It was just that.
Probably 15 to 20 or so. And a lot of it, to Laura's point, it was kind of like friends and family and acquaintances trying to support us, because we launched it to the world thinking everybody would know about it.
Another brilliant move, because that's where you start. What did I tell you in real estate? Go to your friends and your family and exhaust all of that. So that's another brilliant move. So 2 years later, we decided to go to wholesale. All right. And that's because Walmart called you.
Yes.
How, I'm telling you, God is all over this. How did Walmart find Jonas Paul?
That there's so much to unpack there. I feel like it's so hard to kind of have a concise story around it, but I think really a lot of it was
concise as possible. It's an hour show and we're 40 in.
Yes, a lot of it was just like marketing and investing into our brand. And she, saw us through like social media ads and saw all these things. And I think,
a giant like Walmart saw you through social media. Who handled your social media?
At the time we were doing it.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we had an image, we had this one specific image that she recognized and I think triggered it, which then started that conversation. Like, I've seen that image, let's talk, and it was enough that it like grabbed her attention, and she, is very impact driven as well, like herself. And so wanting to support brands that are making a difference, a positive impact in the world. So I think it was also like the synergy of like how she's wired to be and what kind of products she wants to support and what kind of brand she wants to support. And then us like filling that, opportunity for her. And I think what Laura was saying too is like, we were at that time too, it was kind of early days. It was like before omnichannel was a big thing or a big conversation topic. And so we were really dedicated at that time, like it was kind of the height of direct to consumer product. Like we're just going to focus 100% on direct to consumer. And so we were really torn when they approached us because it was such a great opportunity, but it changed our model or how we were thinking about doing things. And I think now, we wouldn't change it at all. Like it was never a bad decision to pursue that, because we were actually contemplating like, is this a direction we want to pursue as a brand? Because it immediately creates more complexity in what you're trying to buld.
Okay, so two brilliant. So I'm going to pause you too. I'm going to pause you too, because y'all say brilliant things you don't even know you're saying them. So there's two huge things. I don't know if the audience picked up on this, but there's two huge things that he just said. And those two huge things, why Walmart called him, is number one, social media consistency. That's number one. Number two, Ben said the image. The image. You probably use that image over and over and over again, like the golden arches.
Yeah.
And so it was the golden arches that she picked up on, that image, and it was the consistency. So when you guys are out there doing your marketing, remember consistency, remember branding, and remember the image, because he was branding, y'all were branding the company probably along with branding Jonas, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So those are two brilliant things. So Walmart called you. How many stores did you go into, and how many stores are you in now?
Fortunately, she rolled us out nationwide, and so it's about 2,800 stores, 2,880.
By the way, she rolled you out nationwide.
Yeah.
Nice, that's huge. They never do that.
Yeah.
They want to do a trial basis. Like they say, we'll roll you out to 10 stores.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's huge.
No, it was, it was huge, and, started with 18 SKUs, I believe, which is also pretty big for an optical, for a retailer to commit to that, because there's such limited board space. When it comes to optical frames.
How many SKUs do y'all have? 250, I believe you said?
Yeah, we have 220 to 230 in there, yeah.
So she rolled you out. Have you been kicked out of any of the stores?
No. We've actually expanded. So we're up to 29 SKUs now. And they're
29 SKUs.
Walmart's doing a great new 2.0 stores that are beautiful, really well done. And we're kind of the featured kids brand in those stores.
And you still have a good profit margin even with wholesale.
Yes.
Right. Listen up, 2017, it's 2023, and they're still in Walmart. They're in more stores than they were before with more SKUs. No, they're in the same amount of stores with more SKUs. That's huge, y'all. And so you're not just in Walmart. What else are you in?
Yes. And so, we're in National Vision, which is Eyeglass World, America's Best. We're in iMart Express. We're in BJ's Wholesale.
America's Best, y'all. That's huge. That's one of the biggest brands that you just, out of all the ones you just mentioned, Walmart and America's Best. I just said.
Yeah, they run a great business.
In a commercial.
Yeah.
No, they run a great business. They're one of the most well-respected optical, companies. And I think too, one other thing I want to add to it, because you hit on a great point, image, brand matters. Brand really does become your moat, especially working with a Walmart, and I want to dispel this myth. At least in our experience, Walmart has been great to work with. You have people ask that question all the time, like, how's that been? Have you kept your margin and all these things? And they've been awesome to work with. And I think a lot of it goes back to us actually building a brand, and they see the value in the brand you build. So they actually give you the margin when you're a brand coming in. So I think it goes back to that, again, what you said kind of triggered that thought around, like, it really is important to build a brand and an image, because then you have more leverage in the discussions. And if they want you, they're willing to pay for it, and they're not going to squeeze you on margin. They're going to treat you well. They're going to respect you. So.
Absolutely. So we're going to get to an audience question. And let's just keep the answers as precise as possible, because we have a whole bunch of questions from them and a whole bunch of questions from me. I see a part 2 coming on.
Yeah, we're okay with it. This is great. I'm loving it. Yeah.
So what advice would you give to entrepreneurs looking to break into the wholesale retail industry and build good relationships with retailers?
That's a great question.
It's a great question. Yeah. I mean, I think
Were my questions not great?
No, yours are great too.
Yes.
All great questions.
They're inspiring a lot of other great questions.
Let's give Steph a great answer here.
Yeah. I think there's so many tools now. It kind of goes back to that. I think, like, obviously marketing is huge. Targeting within your marketing, creating the right messaging to get in front of the right buyers is really important. And then I think it goes back to, again, like, leveraging your network, being persistent, being kind, like trying to be present and supportive, on their LinkedIn and other things like that. Like, I think thinking of it more as like relationship building than just a transactional thing, I think is, one, it makes business a lot better.
Another brilliant statement from Ben. I tell you, they're knocking that out of the park, aren't they, y'all? Another brilliant statement. Build a relationship instead of a transaction. Everybody goes for the transaction. Everybody goes for the kill, the thrill of the deal. But you really got to build a relationship, especially with a Walmart and America's Best. Go ahead. Yeah. I got to point these out because y'all just gloss over them.
No, that's great. Because it is, I think, buyers, you just have to put yourself in their shoes. Think about all the emails you get, all the like, hey, this is a big sales pitch. This is the best thing ever. And I think just like being present, being encouraging, like trying to build a relationship, using your network to build a relationship, just gets your foot in the door to have a conversation. And that's what you really need.
And I think in today's world, like, relationship can be so easily, like you said, Michelle, like a transaction. And I think that we've kind of lost that a little bit in this tech world that we live in now. And I think kind of going back to having that pendulum swing back towards the relational side of things, I think, to Ben's point, like being persistent but not being annoying, and there's a big like, balance in all of that. And I think when you are persistent and continue to just be there with people, you want to be there with people but not be annoying, and I think that it can serve you really well in the long
There's a balance there. There's a balance there. Did y'all see that fine balance sheet that Laura just mentioned? Be there with them, but don't be annoying.
Yeah.
To put it bluntly.
Well, and I think one other quick addition to that is like add value to them. Like, I think that's the other piece that some people can forget is, like, they're buyers, they're managing tons of products, might have many categories. They have access to all the data, but at the same time, like, it's not really like presented and packaged nicely in a way that they could like make business decisions that could really like grow their business. So I think if you can do your due diligence, do your research on competitive products, come in and say, hey, I can see that they're priced at this. We're priced at this. We could give you more margin. This could increase your top line. Like, come in with data points that really could be interesting to them or like make their job easier. And I think that immediately like starts the relationship off on the right foot. That you really want to support them. Yeah.
If you make their job easier and provide that white glove service, then 1,000%, guess what? You'll have stickability. And they will want to keep you because you do make it easy for them. We have a company we're selling that delivers to all the public retailers, and they make it so easy for publics to buy from them. And that's what you have to do. So you just answered Jack's question, which was, what strategies did you implement to establish partnerships with retailers and expand products reach in the wholesale market? You just really answered that question. Okay, so so you have 50-50, 50s wholesale, 50s retail.
Yes.
Okay. Do you see it continuously to grow in wholesale? Do you see it growing more in retail? Do you think it's going to stay 50-50? What do you see?
Both. And I think what we've seen, and kind of going back again, maybe to Jack's question, even some, is like, I really do believe we're in kind of a world of convenience for the consumer. And I think people are going to buy the product wherever it's most convenient. Like if they're in a store, your product's there, they like your brand, they're going to buy it there. Like they'll buy from us online. I think what we've seen is it's really been this rising tide. I think we were nervous originally to say like, oh, do we go in retail because they have such a presence, such an audience? Like, is it going to actually cannibalize our direct to consumer, and vice versa? Like people are nervous about us being online.
That's a huge thing. Yeah. That's a huge thing, Ben and Laura, that people struggle with. Oh my gosh, if I'm doing direct to consumer and I'm going to open up wholesale, how's that going to affect this? How's it going to, if I'm all wholesale and I want to go to direct consumer, do they think I'm competing against them? What's the pricing strategy going to be? It's always been a struggle in entrepreneurs' mind. How do you overcome that and do it real quick?
Just do it. I mean, I don't know if it makes sense for all brands.
Nike, just do it.
Again, the pricing, side of it is important and all of that, but it really is, it's brand building. I mean, I think in the end, that brand is going to be our moat. And so really, we want to be available to as many people as possible and whatever channel they prefer. And I think really in the end, we have seen that it's really been a rising tide. As we build our brand direct to consumer, it benefits our retailers. Our retailers benefit us because it gets our brand out there, and it really is. It's been a great synergy, and we continue to be a top selling kids brand, even in brick and mortar stores. So it's
you are in a competitive space, even though you saw a gap in the market. Competitive. Even though you saw a gap in the market, guess what? There's a bunch of copycats, or there's big companies going, oh my gosh, why didn't we think about the kids? So it is a competitive market. Branding is everything. You know what would be really cool is if you sent us that image that Walmart saw in the stores, because if you send that to us, we'll go back and put that in the notes, in the show notes for everybody, in the comments for everybody to see. So that's
huge. For sure.
Okay, so we gotta move on. But branding, you guys, is everything. You hear me talk about the 6 P's, and the 4th P is proprietary. The bigger the brand, the bigger the exit price, the bigger the multiple. The number 1 brand in the world is, do you know who? Do y'all know who is the number 1 brand in the world? It'll be you soon. Maybe John. You know who?
Yeah, is it Coke?
It'll be Jonas Paul soon.
Coke or Nike?
They're in the top 10. Apple, for over $800 trillion, y'all. Over 800.
Oh, revenue. Sorry, I thought you meant most recognizable brand. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, most recognized. Well, no, it's worth the highest value.
Yeah.
That's 800. That's over 800 trillion. Excuse me, just for the brand. That's not counting EBITDA, assets, anything else. That's just the brand itself. Build your brand that builds your exit, so you can exit rich. All right, so let's move on a little bit, as we literally have like 8 minutes left, and I'm on question 6. And there's a bunch of people in the comments that want to ask questions. So I got to get part 2. All right. So starting a business always involves risk, right? Especially a business that's not necessarily in your wheelhouse. Yes, you are a former entrepreneurs, both of you. And yes, you have marketing, you have design, you have graphics, you have all that. But you have 0 experience in the eye business. The biggest experience you had is Jonas and what he went through. So what were some of the initial challenges? You've already mentioned some. But what would you say? Let's just narrow it down. What are the biggest mistakes you made, and what would you do differently? And I don't like to focus on this because I like to go forward, not backward. Yeah. And I don't like review mirrors. I don't like somebody to look in the review mirror and say, oh my gosh, I should have done this, I should have done that. However, it's great learning experience, and you fell forward, you don't fall backward. A lot of people fell backward and they quit, but you got to go forward. So what are some of the biggest challenges, mistakes, and what would you do differently?
Yeah, I think the things we would probably do differently, one challenge has been continually is cash flow. We have a product that takes 3 months to produce, another month or up to 3 months for delivery, and so you have a lot of cash tied up in inventory. And so I think that's been one of the biggest challenges of the business, is just like being able to stay on top of cash flow. You get these huge production orders from Walmart and you have to figure out how to pay for them and, those kind of things. So I think.
And how many returns do you get from Walmart? Because I asked that about wholesale. So one of the challenges of wholesale is returns.
Yeah. Walmart Optical is a little unique in the sense that they kind of take a discount off of invoice that is kind of like a co-op for returns. And so we do, so in general, it's like just a certain percentage off invoice. And so you don't get, I guess, surprised with a lot of those, oh, hey, here's tons of returns. And so a little fortunate in that we have had some along the way as far as, some return charges and things like that. But overall, it hasn't been too bad. And I think too, it just shows our product is also well made. And so that also helps with, reducing the number of returns.
And one of the biggest challenges is cash flow because it's tied up in inventory. I think I might have some ideas to solve that problem that we can talk about offline. What other challenges?
The other challenge I would say, or things we would maybe do differently in the beginning is, you hear that advice a lot of like hire people that are smarter than you as soon as you can afford them. And I think that tied to the cash flow, tied to maybe like we probably would have maybe raised a little more capital than we thought we needed originally just to give us some margin and buffer. I think that's one thing that, entrepreneurs can struggle with is you kind of Jack or Jane of all trades and I'll do this and I'll do this and I'll learn how to read a P&L and I'll learn how to do this. And
master of none.
Yes, exactly. I think had we hired like more experts in their fields like earlier on, even if we were stretching ourselves to be able to afford them, I think it would have just accelerated what we could have accomplished, because I think we've finally gotten to that point where we really are hiring more experts and you can see the value that they bring to the business at a much faster clip versus like we had a great team, but it was kind of like we were all learning together. And I think it just like we could have accelerated things had we had some people that were, experts along the way to kind of.
You did get some experts in the beginning because you didn't really have the knowledge.
Yeah, advisory side of things. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
And have you created a board?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a board. We still have the same board. Yeah.
That's another way to gain people who are smarter than you in areas that you're not.
Yeah.
What's in their wheelhouse, to start that advisory board sooner rather than later. Okay.
Yes, for sure.
Anything else that was a big challenge that you would have done differently?
I think those are some of the main. I'm sure there's been a lot of like hurdles along the way or bumps that we've had to kind of pivot quickly around, but I feel like those are some of the.
Well, I think that's important. How do you see technology impacting your industry for the good or for the bad? Like AI, specifically AI.
Yeah. I think it's going to benefit the optical industry in general. I think that, that's been kind of a thing they've been trying to solve. Like there's a certain experience involved with an optician fitting frames on a face, because everybody's face is so unique and the shape of their face and what frames look good. And so I think that's one piece that will be helpful in the industry, is for the consumer to be able to really find like a perfect fit, really based on even more algorithmically. It's like, it's not going to replace an optician. It's not going to replace that experience, but I think it's just going to make it easier to do it from your phone or from home or,
That's a huge impact. And then maybe the glasses can be ordered quicker, right? They can make them quicker.
Yeah.
And then inventory turns quicker. So that's
access to like more inventory. So like a store could have a thing that, actually these aren't in stock here, but we could order them for you, or, it could like open up, I think, opportunity there.
Avenues,
and I think too, probably some of it, I don't know, I'd be interested in, like, it still is, they say 1 in 4 kids need glasses, for sure. But really the number of parents that don't know their kids need glasses, like that really needs to be solved. Like it really shouldn't be that case, because I think it's just so surprising how You know, a lot of kids really, they don't really find out they need glasses until they start school. And then a teacher notices that they're having trouble reading the board, or there's like behavioral things because they can't pay attention. So I think I'm hopeful there's like more technologies at a younger age that can like help diagnose that quicker, because there's a lot you can do with like myopia prevention and like helping kids. If you can catch it really early on, you can actually reverse the effects of their eyes getting worse.
Let's talk about that real quick, because you have one profit center, and that's selling frames, and 50% retail, 50% wholesale. But you have other profit centers, right? Or
Do you mean from our
selling,
our philanthropic side of the business?
No, we're gonna get that in a second.
Okay.
So no, what I'm talking about is like, do you prescribe this, Ben and Laura? Do you prescribe like those things that can help prevent, like vitamin A and some of those things? Are you selling any of those products?
No, currently more that's on the philanthropic side of it. So that's more like donation side of things.
Well, let's jump into that now. And I'm going to talk to you offline about cash flow, and I'm going to talk to you offline about profit centers. I used to have 5 to 7 of them.
Yeah. No, that's great.
All right. So let's dive into that, Laura. Let's dive into.
Yeah. Our buy site, give site. Yeah. So I think we've touched base on this kind of several times throughout our conversation here, but I think for us in those early days, back to, the start of our conversation, when Jonas was born, obviously born blind, that was a huge change in our lives. And I feel like for us, that was a passion of, hey, like if we can help other kids that maybe don't necessarily have access to supplements and foods, if we could help, be a support for them, that would be an awesome way to, give back. And so that's been, since day one, our Buy Site, Give Site program's been a really important part of our company. And it's just been really neat to see that business, or that, I guess not necessarily business unit, but that branch of the company grow over the last few years. And we've been able to impact over 1 million kids through those donations. And it's just been really cool. And so, yeah. And so I think we're excited to see that, as the business grows and the impact can grow then. And I just feel like that's really close to our hearts personally, obviously. And if we can help other families and other kids that are just going through some of those difficulties, have life-changing supplements, that's pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. So I think it's important. Well, what do y'all think? Do you think it's important to take a nonprofit aspect, whether it's your own nonprofit or partnering with other nonprofits that really have everything together as part of your story, as part of your company brand? How does that help impact Jonas Paul?
I think in many ways, I think for us, it's kind of, I guess, who we are. Like, we're blessed so we can be a blessing to others. And I think there's a certain aspect of it that just keeps you grounded, and a reminder of like the why behind why you're doing what you're doing, which can be continual motivation for you as well as your team. I think it helps you attract great people. I think we've had the blessing. Admittedly, we've had some employees early on that took pay cuts to be a part of something they believed in and wanted to make an impact. And so I think,
hey, my team, listen up to that. They took pay cuts to make an impact. Listen up.
Yeah, seriously. I know. But yeah, I think I think it's just like the fulfillment you get of like when you can align a passion and align like making the world a better place through your work. I just think, I don't know, there's just like a different motivation and a different excitement.
And I think it resonates with the consumers, right?
Yeah.
It resonates with the consumers because people want to spend money with companies who have, that nonprofit, that story, that's something where you're really making an impact in the world instead of just putting money in your pocket.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're impacting the world by helping children see and looking cool.
Yeah.
And also by helping to prevent eye disease or to reverse the signs of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. Awesome. So There's so many questions, but we are out of 4 minutes. What's next for? Well, no. Let me ask you this. Well, tell me this real quick. What's next for Jonas Paul Eyewear? Tell me about the future, real quick. Snapshot. Paint the picture for me. Real quick, though.
World domination.
World domination.
Now you're speaking my language.
Really, we want to be the preeminent kids brand. We want to be like the Kleenex of kids glasses. Really, I mean, that's the big thing. We've made huge investments in brand. We hired Red Antler, which is an amazing brand studio. We've built a new website. We're really investing heavily into brand. And I think that's, hired a great president, and we're doing all these things internally, I don't know, really, it's just like, I think we kind of keep saying it internally that we're repositioning ourselves for more scalable and more sustainable growth. And that's really the mode we're in, is kind of getting everything dialed in operationally so that we can really pour fuel on the fire and keep growing the brand.
You know how you do that? You do that by reading Exit Rich, the 6P method. It's a sustainable, scalable, and when you're ready, sellable exit.
Yeah.
Sellable business. Sure. Okay, so that's great. So what are the 3 to 5 golden tips that you can give to our listeners that are thinking about starting up a business, especially if they're going through a challenge like y'all did with Jonas, and you turn that tragedy into a huge, huge business that helps children see? What are the 3 to 5 tips to thrive? I call it 3 to 5 tips to not just survive, but thrive. What would you tell startups, especially if somebody that's going through a challenge like you, the two of you? Go. You got 60 seconds.
Many tips. One, I would say, like, find your people, find a great network that can encourage you, that can advise you, that could potentially provide capital.
I would say don't be scared to start. I think starting.
Yeah, are y'all
rewarding but very scary process. And so I think being willing to just start it and go for it, and you're going to know real quick if it's going to hopefully succeed or fail, and fail fast.
Yeah.
And I like that. Just get started, like Nike. Just do it. Don't wait for perfection, because that's when you become paralyzed and you sit on your butts, your big butts.
Yeah. Start with a minimum viable product to just test the market, like get something out there, start getting feedback.
Start taking orders, even if you don't have product.
Exactly. And I would piggyback on that too, of being willing to pivot your business model if you need to, because I feel like we started very focused on direct to consumer, and we, thought this is the only thing we're going to do. We're going to stay focused on this. And we, had to pivot and now have kind of a beautiful combination of D2C and wholesale. And I think had we not pivoted at that time, we could have, probably shot ourselves in the foot. So
I think just being flexible, having that flexibility, versatility, and being open-minded. A lot of customers like, this is it. This is my plan. I'm thinking of this. And you can't be that way in business. You always have to aim, always innovate, and always market. And Walmart coming to y'all was a blessing for you, really. And so, but if you were closed-minded, yes, you would have shot yourself in the foot.
Yeah, definitely.
And anything else? That was 3.
I think the other one is, like, really listen to your customers, like, care about them genuinely. I think there's power in, like, providing a great customer experience, being willing to hear their feedback, responding well, just the organic nature of, referrals from people. I think there's just incredible value in that.
Yeah, because if you don't have clients, if you don't have customers in your business will run out of gas.
Exactly.
And you have 2 clients. You have the direct to consumer, and you have the wholesalers. So, okay. Well, any last minute thoughts, y'all?
No, this is great. Thanks for having us.
Great. Yeah.
I have one question. Well, I have a bunch of questions, but here's my last one. What does Jonas think about mom and dad?
Oh, I think he thinks they're kind of cool, right?
I think so. Yeah.
He's proud of y'all?
He loves the company. He loves to walk into the office here and just, he busts in there and I think
chats with the team, asks if he can get on payroll, asks our controller when he can get on payroll.
There you go. You're creating a monster. That's what us entrepreneurs do, create monsters.
Yeah. But no, I think he thinks it's pretty cool. I think his sister's wondering if she's going to get her own business named after her. But, for now, we're just sticking to the one company.
Tell her to give you a problem to solve.
Yes.
Yeah. Seriously.
We'll figure it out.
And I'm sure you two will figure it out in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And so Jonas, does he appear in any of the marketing? Does he appear in any commercials?
Yep, he's been in some, a lot of photo shoots and video shoots over the years. So he's been on some podcasts too. So maybe next time you can have him come and he can chat your ear off.
I've never had a kid on my podcast before.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
He's a personality.
That's for sure.
All right. Well, I want to thank the two of you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story with us. It's extremely inspirational. I always try to challenge everybody to look at how this happened for you, not to you. Get unstuck or being stuck into your victim mentality and learn how you can take that challenge and turn it into a huge opportunity and help that better the world and help other people. And so thank y'all both so much for coming on the show. There's about 20 questions I didn't get to. But you're welcome. And thank you. I'm sorry we went 10 minutes over, but I just couldn't stop. And so neither could they. Thank you to our audience at Exit Rich. Thank you for tuning in week over week over week. I know you found this information, this content very valuable because they took a challenge and turned it into a huge business for them and their family and are helping to impact others around the world. They want world dominance. Let's help them get there. Get there by sharing this message with your network, with your influencers, your fellow entrepreneurs, people who you know are suffering and who have huge challenges. Help them see this episode so they can too take their challenge and turn it into a golden opportunity. Make sure you subscribe to the Exit Rich podcast. And if we've read your question online, you'll receive 3 chapters from Exit Rich, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Exit Rich podcast. Don't forget to check out Michelle Seiler Tucker's Build to Sell Blueprint books and Exit Rich, along with more blogs, videos, and resources at exitrichpodcast.com. Be sure to connect with Michelle on Facebook or LinkedIn and stay tuned for her next episode by subscribing in your favorite podcast player.